روز جان کری به لندن رفته تا با همتای روس خود گفتگو کند. کاخ سفید میگوید این آخرین ایستگاه دیپلماسی درباره استقلال کریمه است و پس از آن تدابیر بسیار جدی بر ضد روسیه اتخاذ خواهد شد. پی اعزام 12 فروند هواپیمای جنگنده F-16 نیروی هوایی ارتش آمریکا به پایگاه هوایی لهستان، منابع خبری امروز در خبری فوری از آغاز مانور هوایی روسیه بر فراز دریای مدیترانه خبر دادند.
تشدید تهدیدهای غرب علیه روسیه 2 روز به زمان برگزاری همه‌پرسی درباره استقلال کریمه از اوکراین باقی مانده. با نزدیک شدن به روز یکشنبه، امریکا و متحدانش همه توانشان را به کار گرفتند تا مانع برگزاری این رفراندوم شوند. جان کری وزیر امور خارجه امریکا که امروز وارد لندن شده، قبل از سفر در واشنگتن تهدید کرد اگر همه‌پرسی در کریمه برگزار شود، امریکا و اروپا روسیه را مجازات می‌کنند. جی کارنی سخنگوی کاخ سفید سخنان کری را این گونه تکمیل کرد که روسیه از قدرت ما آگاه است.
روسیه می‌داند که ما ابزارها و قدرت لازم رو برای تحمیل هزینه اقداماتش داریم. نه تنها آمریکا بلکه شرکای اروپایی ما هم اعلام کردند در صورت نیاز گام‌های بیشتری علیه روسیه برخواهند داشت. پیش از این هم هزینه‌هایی به روسیه وارد شده و ما از راه ممنوعیت صدور روادید این موضوع رو عملی کردیم و اقداماتی هم در اروپا در دست انجام است.
همزمان نخست وزیر جدید اوکراین هم که به امریکا دعوت شده در جلسه شورای امنیت سازمان ملل حاضر شد. در این شورا هم جدال امریکا و غرب با روسیه بر سر اوکراین همچنان ادامه دارد. شورای امنیت در حال بررسی قطعنامه است تا همه‌پرسی در کریمه را غیر قانونی اعلام کند. مهمترین مانع تصویب این قطعنامه حق وتوی روسیه در شورای امنیت است.
Crimea was, is and will be an integral part of Ukraine.
کریمه بخشی جداناپذیر از اوکراین بوده، میماند و خواهد ماند. ما هرگز هر نوع همه‌پرسی دروغین را به رسمیت نمی‌شناسیم، اما آماده هستیم گفتگوی ملی انجام شود تا قدرت منطقه خودمختار کریمه در پارلمان اوکراین افزایش یابد.
مسئولان روسیه از جمله ولادیمیر پوتین رئیس جمهور این کشور همواره بر این نکته تاکید کردند که بحران اوکراین بحران داخلی اوکراین است. نماینده روسیه در سازمان ملل هم با رد ادعاهای امریکا و اروپا گفت اجازه دهید مردم کریمه نظر خود را آزادانه بیان کنند.
روسکی не хотят войны. Как уверен, не хотят ее и украинцы.
ما نمیخواهیم اوضاع در اوکراین بدتر بشه. مسکو باعث افزایش خشونت در اوکراین نشده. همه‌پرسی را مقامات کریمه در نظر گرفتند و ناوگان دریای سیاه روسیه هیچ دخالتی در این زمینه نداره.
امریکا به تهدیدات لفظی اکتفا نکرده و تحرکات نظامی را در منطقه افزایش داده. واشنگتن 12 فروند دیگر هواپیمای F-16 به محل رزمایش هوایی با لهستان اعزام کرد. در مقابل وزارت دفاع روسیه هم 6 هواپیمای جنگنده سوخو 27 و 3 هواپیمای حمل و نقل نظامی به پایگاه هوایی خود در بلاروس فرستاد. قرار است جان کری وزیر خارجه امریکا و سرگئی لاوروف وزیر امور خارجه روسیه امروز در لندن طبق برنامه‌ای از قبل تعیین شده دیدار کنند. هدف از این دیدار انجام آخرین تلاش‌ها برای پایان بخشیدن به رویارویی بین‌المللی بر سر همه‌پرسی در شبه جزیره کریمه و تحولات اوکراین است. اما در شبه جزیره کریمه همه چیز برای برگزاری همه‌پرسی استقلال از اوکراین آماده است.
Moving them to backup positions, and they're saying that this is all part of a simulation. And they're simulating an area of contamination as to say they got actually struck with the nuke strike. Now, the guards of the batteries also are conducting these anti-saboteur maneuvers. And they're operating in hard terrain. And one of their officials says that this is a surprise exercise, and thus it's not subject to control under the Vienna document or the OSCE document. No formal notification was required, but we do inform you out of a gesture of goodwill. This is the message coming from the Russians, I guess, so people out there ain't trying to freak out and say all this other stuff. They can hold these snap readiness drills. We've seen them before. And boy, if anyone holds big drills, it's Russia. And they do have NATO lining up right there on their border. I talked about that in the most recent video. But they go on to state here that this training, with updated numbers now, almost 50,000 troops, 1,700 pieces of military equipment, all for this air defense drill, including 150 aircraft and 200 surface-to-air missile launchers. They said that this was meant to test how prepared Russia is to repel a possible attack. And in the details there, you can see, as I just stated, they're going through a simulation with areas of contamination. Okay, so that's what they're doing. Now, this is important. You need to make note of it. Moscow's air defense system is among the most developed in Russia. And when the U.S. and the USSR were restricted in deploying anti-ballistic missile systems by the ABM treaty that was signed in the 1970s, the capital of Moscow, there in Russia, was selected as the only site allowed an ABM shield. The U.S. didn't choose to safeguard D.C. They chose to preserve the safeguard complex in North Dakota, ensuring its second strike capability. So the defenses have been significantly upgraded since this treaty was scrapped following the withdrawal under George W. Bush and his administration. And both of them have built up largely on both sides, and we've witnessed what they've done moving. A couple of years ago, they started moving all types of equipment out of some of their major complexes, the Pentagon, and into Cheyenne Mountain, among other places. And they're saying North Dakota here is the spot that they chose. I don't think many people realize that. What's so important people don't realize out there in North Dakota at that complex? Well, apparently it's important enough to be the only place in America to have this ABM shield, so to speak. And you can see here, there is the safeguard complex. So it's not D.C. that's guarded. When it comes to the United States, right there, right up there near the Canadian border is where this facility sits. And what's interesting, watch this. You guys may have seen videos I've done on this site a long time ago. I think on my original channel that no longer exists. Look at this. This is the facility. And that massive pyramid structure that sits there. Kick it to 2D. I think it'll show it better in 2D. Yeah, there it is. So this is the site that is protected by the missiles here in America, or the missile shield. Just so happens to be that site up by the Canadian border that has that massive, crazy looking pyramid shaped thing that I've covered in the past. But there you guys go. There's a look at it. I'll leave links. I will continue to update with more information as I come across it.
Of the Russian ambassador to Turkey caught on video. Ambassador Andrei Karlov was shot dead while making a speech at an art exhibition in Turkey's capital, Ankara. The horrifying moment the ambassador is hit and falls to the ground after being shot in the back with multiple rounds. As onlookers scrambled for safety, the gunman shouted defiantly,
God is greatest. Do not forget Aleppo. Do not forget Syria. Do not forget Aleppo. Do not forget Syria. Get back. Get back. Only death will remove me from here. Everyone who has taken part in this oppression will one by one pay for it.
Turkish authorities said the attacker was, quote, neutralized. Russian President Vladimir Putin tonight reacting to the assassination.
The only response we should offer to this murder is stepping up our fight against terror, and the criminals will feel the heat.
Turkey's interior minister said the gunman was a law enforcement officer, a 22-year-old member of the riot police who was born in Turkey. The State Department condemned the attack.
We stand ready to offer any assistance that may be required to Russia and Turkey as they investigate this despicable attack. which was, as the Secretary noted, also an assault on the right of all diplomats to safely and securely advance and represent their nations around the world.
A journalist took these stunning photographs moments after the carnage began. After the attack, as the ambassador was quickly taken to the hospital, Turkish security forces swarmed the area. It is not clear what impact the killing may have now on Turkey's sometimes fragile relations with Russia, which hit an all-time low after Turkish forces shot down a Russian warplane near the Syrian border in November 2015. Russia also is widely blamed by many in the region for its part in supporting Syria's Assad regime amid a humanitarian crisis taking place in war-torn Aleppo. Following the ambassador's assassination, Turkish President Erdogan and Russian President Putin spoke by phone, according to a Russian news agency. Both countries, along with Iran, expected to hold a summit on Syria in Moscow Tuesday. The slain ambassador had served
of the decision that Vladimir Putin personally made not to retaliate.
Well, first of all, let's go back to the beginning and remember that Russia carried out what is clearly an unacceptable hacking attack that attempted to interfere with our political process. So what the serving president, President Obama, did yesterday was fully justified, and if anything, some are criticizing him for not going far enough. But at the same time, what President Putin has done is quite clever, not surprising. It's been apparent for some time that he's written off the Obama administration, and he's now playing nice with the incoming administration, hoping that they will pursue a kind of a reset or normalization of relations and let Russia off the hook for a lot of the things that it's done over the last couple of years, starting with the aggression against Ukraine. That would be very unwise, but the positive response to Putin's move I think is going to raise even further anxieties on the part of those who care about the whole European order.
What should the White House make of this tweet that Donald Trump has just posted? Great move on delay by V. Putin. I always knew he was very smart.
Well, I think the White House is likely to continue to say they have nothing more to say about the subject. But we're seeing that this is an unusual transition where the incoming president is far more on the radar screen and on the Twitter account than is usually the case. So there will be a lot of speculation here in Washington. But we only have one president at a time, and President Obama, I think, did the right thing. And now we have to look even further at the detailed assessment that he's going to release before he leaves office. Congress is going to investigate this as well. The congressional leadership is quite fired up about the hacking. And so I hope that the president-elect, when he comes into office, won't make any hasty moves to normalize relations with Russia until he's consulted with the Congress, consulted with the allies, especially allies like the UK, which have borne a lot of the burden of the sanctions against Russia and would be left high and dry if the U.S. were to act unilaterally.
But what sort of position does it actually put Donald Trump in? If we set aside the tone of this tweet for a moment, how can Donald Trump maintain these sanctions if Russia has said, look, we're not going to respond in kind?
Yeah. Well, these particular sanctions were limited. The main action taken was the expulsion of diplomats, and they will be eventually replaced. The most important sanctions are the ones that were imposed 2.5 years ago in the wake of the illegal annexation of Crimea and the Russian aggression in eastern Ukraine. And nothing Russia has done since that time has justified even an easing, much less a lifting of those sanctions. There's a strong consensus right now, at least, across the Atlantic that Russia has to take some concrete actions before the sanctions are removed. So hopefully this will be factored in the deliberations of the new administration. And I hope this issue is raised in the confirmation hearings for the new Secretary of State and Secretary of Defense, because they're realists about Russia, and hopefully they will provide some more reassuring language than we've heard in the Twitter feed of the President-elect.
You only left NATO a very short time ago. What was the view from that organisation about the actions by Russia in recent years?
Well, the alliance, I think, has been quite united in seeing what Russia has done against Ukraine and even earlier against Georgia as a basic challenge to the whole international system that we've built together with Russia since the end of World War II, and especially since the end of the Cold War. So there's no serious divisions within NATO that we need to strengthen our defense and our deterrence. We have to maintain sanctions until Russia meets those conditions. And most importantly, the two sides of the Atlantic have to stay united. Clearly, allies are a bit nervous about some of the statements during the campaign about NATO made by the president-elect. More recently, he's been a bit more reassuring, saying that he's a believer in NATO. He's mainly